In this next lesson, we're really going to start to look at some of the classic rock artists like Led Zeppelin and artists who are really kind of ingrained when we think of 70s rock and roll. And in doing that, we're going to look at a couple of the different songwriting techniques that they used in the rhythm guitar parts and really see how we can apply that to our own playings and, you know, use a lot of these first position chords or power chord shapes that we're familiar with, but put them into a little bit of a different context when we incorporate some different rhythm techniques that are happening with our right hand. So let's hear this song over the backing track, and then I'm going to break down what I'm doing. So this progression is going to be in the key of E, and we're going to draw heavily from the blues influence that Led Zeppelin was basically taking from when they were writing a lot of these songs. So we're in the key of E major, and I'm going to just play my E major bar chord to start out with. So this is E, the second fret of A, the second fret of D, the first fret of G, and then the B in the E string. And this song is basically, at least in the verse part, all dependent on playing off of this third fret of the E string. So you notice what I'm doing here is I'm using this interplay of the open E string and then the third fret of the E string. And when I play this note, this is going to sound interesting. I just said this song was in the key of E, but I'm now playing this note, which is not in the major scale. This is actually a minor third, right? Normally if I was playing the major scale, I would have G sharp. But this is, in essence, this kind of rock sound that took from the blues sound where I'm combining the minor and major sounds. So even though I'm playing this E major chord, I have this nice little dance of also including this minor third. And when we think of that kind of classic blues sound where I'm playing something major but then interweaving it with something minor like this, something like that where I played a little bit of a major scale but then a little bit of a minor pentatonic scale and I interwove them, that's really the essence of this kind of classic rock sound that draws from blues, and that's how we're thinking about the rhythm guitar part on this as well. So this is my first part. I'm going to play my E chord, down, down, up, and then I'm going to play the third fret of the low E string again and pull off. And that, in essence, is kind of how we're approaching this first section here. So I play down, down, up, third fret, pull off, and then down, up, third fret, down, right? So I'm really trying to feel this as a nice continuous piece of music, and I'm having my pinky follow along with that bass line. So that's what I want to hear as I play through this. Another alternative we have, because you might be having some trouble reaching over with your pinky, is I can simplify this. So now I'm going to do the bar chord like this, or the E chord rather, like this, where I'm not going to worry as much about the third. And I'm going to play it like this, like an AC/DC guitarist might play their chords, right? So that's my thought process here. I'm pedaling on this E chord and just interplaying it with playing that third fret on the low E string. And what I'm going to do as I play through this, so I have my first time through the riff, that little variation. And then I'm going to play down, down, up, and then down, third fret, up, and shift to my A chord. So real slowly. And the tricky part here is you'll notice I'm pulling off that 3rd fret of the low E string and going to the A chord. So rather than focusing on exactly what I'm kind of saying as I describe this chord chart, I would really closely look at the tablature of this, because hearing what I play slowly and trying to connect it to the tablature as you go along is probably the best method for understanding all of those little kind of divots within that riff as I play through it, right? So that's how I'm playing that whole verse riff. And again, if I was to simplify it and play it now with this more power chord variation that won't require me using my pinky, it would sound like this. Right? And this whole approach is really taken a lot from how somebody might approach a dobro, or one of the classic slide instruments, right? Which obviously Led Zeppelin, they used slides in their playing as well, but we're really taking from this, right? This kind of interplay of playing this 3rd fret of the E string, and then the open A string, and then the 3rd fret of the E string. Right? That whole kind of motion that we have where I'm playing constantly with the fret, the note being fretted at the 3rd fret, and then open, is really taken from what I think of as that classic kind of open slide sound that we'd hear in a player like John Lee Hooker. So, I'm playing through these sounds. Right, and I'm choosing to do these with my pinky. Again, we have the power chord variation. And now we have the chorus. So I'm starting with just this simple E power chord. This is the 7th fret of A, the 9th fret of D, and the 9th fret of G, and I'm playing it with my open E string. Right, and I'm playing these all down. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now I'm gonna go down to this D chord. You'll also notice, again, if you're someone that's been keeping up with the numbers, this is actually... Right, if I was in the key of E, I would normally play this as my 7th chord, which would be a G sharp diminished, but this is a flat 7. So I'm playing both a minor 3rd and a flat 7. Again, this is the blues sound, where I'm in a major key, but I'm borrowing some of these notes from the minor pentatonic and some of the chords from the minor pentatonic, so it has a little bit of a different sound. If I was to play my major scale over this progression, it doesn't exactly fit, right? This is more of a, right, a major pentatonic meets minor pentatonic scale. So just a little bit of background of how the harmony is at play here and how we're getting at this more rock sound as opposed to something that's a little bit more straight up major. So I'm playing through a full bar of my E power chord. Now I'm going to this D power chord and I'm going to arpeggiate it, which you could hear in a lot of Led Zeppelin songs. Right, I'm now just trying to create a little bit more of an intricate guitar part, creating a little bit more diversity in my approach to what I'm doing. So that's my D power chord of 5, 7, 7, but I'm playing the A string, the D string, and the G string. And now I'm gonna go to this voicing. So what I'm doing here is this is actually an A chord, but what I've done is I've brought my ring finger down and I've made it an A first inversion, or an A over C sharp. So both of those probably sound complicated in their own right. What exactly does it mean when I say I'm doing an inversion? Well, we're going to have a whole lesson dedicated to inversions, but essentially what it means is instead of playing a chord from its root note, like we normally would, right? If somebody said play an A chord, the lowest note you would play is an A. Well, an inversion says, and more specifically a first inversion, well, a major chord is made up of 3 different notes. So what if I made one of those other notes the bottom note of this? And that's all we're doing here. In my A chord, I have my 1, my major 3rd, and my 5. Well, now I'm just saying, well, I'm just going to play it from the C sharp. And that's how I get this voicing, right? I already had a C sharp in this chord. I'm not adding anything, special or anything new. But now I've made the bass part this C sharp, and I have a whole different context that I can play this A chord. Again, we're going to go more and more into inversions later on in this course, but I just wanted to introduce that concept because we are in fact using an inversion in this instance. So the whole time through that little progression, I'm playing 1 bar of my E power chord. I'm arpeggiating my D power chord, and then I'm arpeggiating my A over C sharp by playing the A string, the D string, and then honestly, sometimes I like to play the G string, sometimes I like to play the B string. Led Zeppelin did have some sloppy guitar parts, so honestly, some of the, cacophonous nature you can get of playing in between these chords and selecting different notes all the time, this is a rhythm guitar part, so it doesn't need to be necessarily articulate like a lead part. We sometimes want it to have that body and that warmth that you would maybe get from some blues music where you're really just focusing on the rhythm and the personality rather than having it be this very specific and articulate passage. So, now that we've broken down the two thought processes that we have, one for the verse and one for the chorus, let's hear this once more over the backing track. So again, my thought process here is really just trying to, look at these two different aspects that I have, these two different methodologies I have in the verse and the chorus. When you're starting this out, again, I recommend just doing the simple power chord variation that we have on this, since it is tricky to play that E chord and then also incorporate our pinky. But if you're feeling up to the challenge, I do encourage you to try that along with me as I do that E chord with the pinky. And then as we're going down here, I'm really just trying to explore the diversity that I have within my right hand. So now instead of just straight up playing all downstrokes or straight up arpeggiating, I'm now using a combination of both of these techniques to create a guitar part that really moves and gets into the riff territory. So riff is a term we hear often in rock music, and sometimes it's hard to say, well, what is a rhythm guitar part and what is a riff and what is a lick and how do they differ? And generally when we think of riffs, I usually think of them as kind of more in the rhythm guitar part of how we would approach a song, but they're dynamic rhythm parts. They're not really just playing chords that are backing something up. They have their own personality and their own style to them, and they include a lot of lead aspects to what they're doing. So a song like Crazy Train is a perfect example where, yes, it's a single note passage and we're doing a lot of single note things in it, but we're actually kind of playing something that's a little bit more in the rhythm aspect of what's going on here. Same with something like Smoke on the Water, or any of these kind of classic songs that we learn on the instrument. These are all in the riff territory, and that's what we're getting at here. We're trying to create something that, even though it uses chords, has a dynamic element to it and is really pushing the instrument forward and our understanding of it. So, as you play through this, I encourage you to play it at 75 or 50% speed, use some of these easier variations we have, and again, just take your time with it and try your best to play it up to tempo or to a tempo that's comfortable for you with any of the variations that you need.